Welcome to the Numerology and the Astrology for July 13th, 2020. If you add all those numbers together, you get a 15, and if you add the 1 and the 5 together, you get the number 6. Sometimes, as you know, I will take the number 6 and I will just go with the hermit and we will talk about the introspection and the inner awareness, but there are moments that I separate them out again and I look at the 1 and the 5 as individual numbers and how they work together in order to make the 6. The 1 and the 5, the 1 is about being the individual, being unique, being different, not trying to fit in, not in an arrogant, pompous way, but a place where you're not seeking to be like others, you're seeking the truth of who you really are on the inside. The number 5 is a grounding number and a stability number, and it's about going into the earth and, looking at what does it take to be part of the earth and to recognize that you are a piece of this planet also, and you make a difference by being here. It makes sense that if you get the number 6, that you need both of those, that you, to be able to constructively, safely, and consciously go into silence and go into stillness, you have to do it for yourself because you're not really doing it for anyone else. And you also have to do it from the standpoint of being very grounded and stable. I find that so many times people go into meditation in order to have a fast fix for enlightenment. And enlightenment is not a fast fix. It's a slow, steady process that takes a lot of introspection and a lot of stillness and a lot of reflection and a lot of brutal honesty. So you can imagine you'd have to stay really grounded. You'd have to be very conscious of that groundedness and keep it very practical and not get into those euphoric states without bringing yourself back down to earth in a very constructive way and say, okay, yeah, you're a very cool person and you're special for sure, but you also need to use it in a way that applies to the physical world and you don't just live in your little bubble. With the number 6, learning how to have solitude from that place of peaceful acceptance is something that each of us is getting a chance to learn right now. The number 6 is all about the stillness from the core of your soul. Each of us at some time in our life must learn to just be with the self. We must learn to stop and allow something from within teach us a series of hidden secrets that have been kept safe until we learn to listen without judgment. All the great teachers tell the story of sitting somewhere in silence and learning to accept all aspects of ourself. The good, the bad, the old, the new, the lies, the fears, the despair, the resentment, all that we are needs to be learned and embraced and loved. All parts of yourself are trying to tell you something. That does not mean that those voices and fears need to control you or your actions, but they need to be understood and explored as the actions and influence they have upon our choices and decisions. The best choices come from having all the information to work with. When you do not have the option, the mind will try to fill in the blanks with choices that will keep you safe. While that might seem okay in the evolution of your soul, it often perpetuates the fears that need to be transcended and matured into a greater wisdom and inner knowing. Seek always more. Never settle for just enough. There is always a way to find wholeness. Anything less will hold you hostage to your unresolved issues. Okay, the astrology today. The aggression of the Aries moon continues to put pressure on everyone. The frustration seems to be building up and you want to have an outlet for this energy. While everyone has found some places to constructively channel such energy, there is also only so much gardening you want to do in the heat of the day. It becomes clear that we have to take this world and move it into a more personal place in our heart. The way through is to deliberately approach situations not from a place of pointing fingers and blaming for the problems, but to be willing to shift things into a proactive place of trying out solutions. You cannot manifest change if you are unwilling to embrace and attempt new ways of connecting with others. There is a small shift in the energy that will allow for a more peaceful approach today. Try doing something new that allows you to connect on a deeper level with others. The Sun and Jupiter are moving into a position of opposition. You will feel it more tomorrow. This will require you to change many things and rearrange your priorities. We are in a time when we need to think about what we should do rather than what we want to do. The light is so bright right now. It has illuminated the intense and very old conflicts that are happening right under our noses. We are in a time when we must change our old ways and habits. We must stop the overreach of a few that harm so many. As Mars and Chiron move into alignment, you may feel your courage increase. With that confidence, take some decisive action to defend and help others. That is how we help ourselves and get out of this trap. It is not about claiming that we have the right to do what we want, but about claiming that freedom always requires you to address the rights of others. A better use of freedom is to speak up and protect those that are not being given those same freedoms. So my quote for today: the best choices come from having all the information to work with. When you do not have that option, the mind will try to fill in the blanks with choices that keep you safe. Seek always more. Never settle for just enough. There is always a way to find wholeness. Anything less will hold you hostage to your unresolved issues. So I didn't do a blog per se today, but because I've been dealing with clients today, I noticed themes. And the theme today is about learning to embrace the failures in our life. I'm always amazed that some of the most powerful, successful people have faced insurmountable failures and challenges and hardships and abuse. And what's great about that is that they didn't stop. And I think that is what it takes to be famous and successful. I think that you have to be willing to deal with the failures, willing to deal with people not really understanding you or getting where you're coming from. I think that in life it's hard to find those few people who truly understand where you're coming from. And I believe that, everyone that's here is a representative from another time and place and dimension and galaxy. And I think that you came here as the best of the best to try and bring your planet, dimensions, experience into this dimension and to share that knowledge and wisdom. And the mistake that so many of us make is that we think our truth is the only truth. And there's billions and billions and billions of galaxies, and there's, more than that of planets. And so to think that we have the only answer is just so absurd. It's just so absurd to think that my answer is the only answer. And it's very, very hard to stay open and to try to sift through a personality of a person and sort out that rare, unusual piece of truth and that kernel of wisdom that they are trying, successfully or unsuccessfully, to share. Especially right now, I think that's incredibly hard because I don't think in some instances that truth is being spoken. I think in a lot of instances, opinion is being spoken, and opinion is not truth at all, ever. And I've got my opinions, and at least I know that I'm just saying an opinion and it's not necessarily true. But I always say that this is where I'm at the moment, or this is what I believe to be true at the moment. But I recognize that truth is this constantly evolving process. Science and physics proves that energy, pure energy, all by itself, produces matter. Really think about that for a second. Pure energy, nothingness, absolute nothingness, produces matter. And so if you look at, as Deepak Chopra would say, if you look at the cells and you get through the cells and you see the nuclei and you get past the nuclei and you see the protons, neutrons, and electrons, and you get past that and you see quarks and all these other little subtle levels of existence, what there is after that is a whole bunch of nothing. So we're being held together by a whole bunch of nothing. And I believe that your energy, my energy, everyone's energy is eternal. I think that when you die, you still exist. I think sometimes when we die, even parts of our personalities still exist, and it takes us a while to shed that skin of our personality and allow us to evolve into our essence rather than the human condition of this genetic body or our last genetic experience that we picked. And so I think that we're eternal and timeless, and I think that that's comforting to me on so many levels, that you know, you really are not going to cease to exist. And I think that we have groupings of spiritual family that are attracted to each other based on vibrations of energy. And that does not mean that people that are not vibrating in your frequency you can't relate to, but sometimes it's a little bit more of a challenge. And it again is not saying that my vibration is right and yours is wrong. It just means that where my vibration is at the moment, I'm having trouble harmonizing with your energy field. So when I look at all these amazing, powerful, famous, wealthy clients that I have, what I see is this incredible force inside of their soul that refuse to give up, that even under terrible, terrible, abusive childhoods and situations and circumstances, that they rose again and they had an idea whose time had come and they went with that idea no matter what. And they failed more times than they succeeded. But you have to be willing to fail. And I think that there's something happening in the world right now that people are so terrified to say, I made a mistake, I was wrong. I made a choice or a decision and I was wrong. And I think that cycle of, no, I'm not wrong, I'm really right, you just don't understand, da 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 da. I think that time is ending. And I think that people that are going to continue that pattern from this point on are going to be seen as childish and not willing to grow and own, their mistakes. Because, I can only refer to my ballet dancing career. It's like, how many times did I fail at fouettes before I got fouettes? How many times did I fail at cabrioles until I got a cabriole? How many times did I slip and fall on a stage in front of an audience, land on my back and do a kung fu move and come back up again? I think that the failure is not an issue. It's what your soul does with that failure. Do you allow it to collapse you? Do you allow it to shame you into no movement? For me, what it does is it challenges me to look at the next level. Like, wow, you're still beating yourself up, Suzanne. You're still afraid of owning, this place that you're at. And it's so much simpler if you just go, yep, I totally screwed that up. I totally made a mistake. I totally didn't see what I should have seen. I allowed myself to be hoodwinked. I wanted to believe an illusion. I wanted to believe a fantasy. And now there's a consequence for that. Because again, in introspection, with the number 6, you have to get very grounded and very real about what you as the individual have done. And I think that there's a lot of peace that comes with that. When I can't tell you how many people I know that have had terrible, terrible, horrible abuse in situations, and every time they talk about it, the emotion is right there, and it comes up, and it's raw, and it's real, and it's raw, and it's real, and it's raw, and it's real. And I'm not saying that it isn't, because it is. But there's a point where you work through it, and when you work through it, then when the story comes up, you aren't crying. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel it. It just means that you recognize it as part of your history. And it's not you. It might explain some of your interesting quirks and behaviors, but it isn't really you. You don't have to identify with the mistakes. You don't have to identify with the hardships that have happened to you. Use them as a springboard to propel you forward. And so many people loop back down. They loop back down into it. This terrible thing happened to me. Feel bad about it for me. Feel bad for me. Don't push me because of it. Don't challenge me because of it, because I've been wounded. Don't challenge me. And I'm like, no. I remember I was assisting at a ropes course, and I had created this particular ropes course, and there was a girl that was there that was very collapsed, and she was young. She was probably about 12, 13, 14, something. And she just went zipping up these trees and leaping for the gold ring, and I was just stunned. I mean, like, you would have never guessed that based on her external victim persona. And after she went up multiple trees, I just said, okay, that's it. You are out. I am not for one more second falling for this game you're playing, this shtick that you're playing. That is, I'm so weak, I'm collapsed, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, look at this. You're like the only person fearlessly going up these trees and leaping for the gold ring, and you can absolutely do anything you set your mind to, but you have got to drop the story. I mean, it's a story. And I find so many people are identified with their story, and we get addicted to our story, addicted to our culture, addicted to, I am an American and this is what it means. And if you don't see it the way I see it, then that's not being an American. And, I believe that being an American is about being an integrated society and giving everyone an opportunity and calling out when the freedoms of others are being taken away, even if those freedoms are happening in another country. I believe that we originally were supposed to be the voice of conscience. We were supposed to be Jiminy Cricket for the world. I think that we have capitulated that role temporarily, because I know that the American people haven't capitulated that authority. But I believe that at this moment, it looks to the world as if we have capitulated that authority. So, how about right now, say with me, I refuse to capitulate. My choice to be the Jiminy Cricket for all of those in my life and to be a conscience for freedom. I refuse to let other people dictate or mandate what that freedom is supposed to look like. And I think if we all owned up to that individuality and spoke from the place of, being the conscience for the world, again, I believe that we can make a big difference in the world. And I think without that, we lose a part of our heart. We lose a part of something that's very important to us, and I think that it has to be reclaimed later. So no matter what the external is doing, don't ever let anyone take that away from your spirit. But that freedom has to be directed in a conscious, safe, constructive, and loving way. It cannot be egoically forced in a way that causes more suffering. That's not freedom. You don't have the freedom to cause more suffering to others. That's not freedom. That's ego. So, okay, thanks everyone. You have a good evening.